loud. Good catch. Thanks for that reminder.
Thank you.
Fantastic. It says we are recording, screen sharing. I'm having people join.
Nice.
Anytime you want to go, I think I am ready. Paul, I'm going to have to work with you. If you can see my previous email about the attachment format, that would be helpful for me. And if need be, I can make you the host when your time is up to speed. But if you're able to send it as an actual attachment, that'd be great. Susan, Kate, if you want to take it away.
All right. Yes. Thank you, everybody. We're happy to see you all here today. My name is Susan Schipull, and I am the garden elective teacher here at Wilson Middle School. We were going to do this presentation from our hydroponics room, but because of internet issues, we decided we better stay where we were hardwired and we knew it would work. So thanks for kind of dealing with that with us. We are going to be looking at gardens in small spaces, and Kate and I will be talking about hydroponic systems and some of the ways that we've been able to use hydroponics this year and working with our students. And then we're going to have Paul, who is going to be working on or talking to you about container gardens in just a few minutes. So last year when the pandemic began, we were a little worried as garden elective teachers about how do we do garden with students online. And one of the things that we were prompted to do was to apply to Ag in the Classroom for their New Mexico Grow Grant. And as a result of that, we were really fortunate to receive a hydroponic system, which we were able to get set up and we've been using throughout the year. And in addition to working with the hydroponics, we've been sending kits home with the kids to try different growing methods at home, including hydroponics. So in this presentation, I'm going to be going through one of the kits that we presented to the students that we delivered materials to them. They were actually able to put this together. And it turned out to be a really cool opportunity for these kids. So Jamie, if you don't mind starting this, going to the next slide, I'll just run through that real quick. Again, we're from Wildcat Blooms Garden, Kate and I at Wilson Middle School. And next slide. So with our hydroponic system, we were really fortunate to receive an entire classroom that I now call our grow room. And we've taken whiteboards off and used the shelving to start our plants. And you can see from these slides that these are all of the different starters that we have in that room right now, getting ready to go out to our garden. Go ahead, Jamie, next slide. And we have some big, beautiful windows, and we have plants growing in those windows. So that's another great growing opportunity for us and the students. And next slide, Jamie. I'm showing you the slides because we're not in the hydroponics room. We were going to just show it to you, but didn't work out that way. So again, the big, beautiful windows that allow us to grow and provide plenty of light. Okay, next slide. So now getting into the hydroponics a little bit, like I said, we received this grant and the materials to start our hydroponic system. So in October, and Jamie, thanks, next slide. Whoops, sorry, stop there. Okay, so we got started. We actually got the system set up in October, and we started with our first seedlings towards the end of October. So this is October 24th. We put our seedlings into a grow tray, and we have a nutrient solution that they're in. And on the next slide, check the date. Go ahead, next slide, Jamie. Whoops, back one. There we go. Now, 4 days later, look at this. We've got our seedlings starting to grow. And at this point, they're ready to put into our nutrient solution. So they germinated really, really quickly. And it was really kind of an exciting thing to share with the kids, and even for Kate and I to see how quickly all of this happened. Okay, next, thank you. And then by the 7th of November, we were starting to see the major growth of these plants. And next slide. So I'm going through this really quickly, sorry, but our time is limited. And by December 26th, when we came back after being on break for a few days, this is what we saw. It was kind of like a Jurassic Park moment, walking in there and seeing the huge leaves. We had basil that the leaves were as big as the palm of your hand, and our lettuce was huge. And by the time we were done with this crop in March, we had done, I believe, 9 harvests. So this has just been an incredible journey for us to see how the plants grow and to see how rapidly we get these harvests from the plants that are growing in the hydroponic system. So thanks. And in March, then we decided to take out the first crop, and just looking at the roots and the way they intertwined with one another and just the huge abundance of roots that there were was a fascinating thing, again, for both Kate and I, and also to share with the students. And you can see here just how massive these roots really were. So we cleaned it out on March 6th, and then next slide. And by March 11th, there's our new crop ready to go into the hydroponic system. So again, like I said, just how quickly this happens is truly amazing. Okay.
9 harvests.
And now this is current. These pictures were taken yesterday. So those little tiny plants that you saw in the previous slide are now looking like this. So we have several different types of lettuce here. We have some herbs growing. And so, you know, we're ready to start harvesting the lettuce already. And we'll see how long we can grow this crop for. So that's been truly a fun part of our learning this semester and working with the students. And we also, like I said, wanted the students to have the opportunity to do some of this at home. And so now, Jamie, I think that was the last slide, right? Sorry. I believe it was.
You want me to stop presenting this?
Yep, that's fine.
You did 9 harvests. I don't know if you said that.
Okay, and so now what I want to show you is one of the activities that we did with the students at home. So we sent a kit of materials home to the students. And again, this is thank you to Ag in the Classroom for providing these materials to us. I'm just going to go through and show you what we had initially. So we started out with a cup and a lid, and this became a place for the plants to grow. So we were talking about the needs of the plants as within the hydroponic system. So we had the cup and the lid. We had some fertilizer, and we sent it home in a little cup like this for the students. The ones the fertilizer that we used was the Flora Nova, and the units on that are 7, 4, and 10. Ag in the Classroom, just for your information, recommends Maxi Grow, and their units were 10 parts nitrogen, 5 parts phosphorus, and 14 parts potassium. We had rock wool, which is just a little piece of wool that looks like this for the plants to grow in. We have a dowel that we marked off in inches. So we left 3 inches at the bottom to put into the container, and then we marked it off in inches so the students could measure the growth of their plants as, you know, they develop. Straw so that they could aerate, and then we use some little, and I'll show you these in just a moment, just some little beads here that absorb water to represent the nutrients that we're going to put, you know, into the solution for the plants to grow. So to get started, all of the kids received this plastic lid. And according to the instructions that you'll see in the document that Jamie will load into the chat eventually, we put 2 holes in the lid, and I went ahead and did this before we sent it home with the kids. And then we had them fold back the center, this X in the center, we just had them fold the flaps back to create a little square. And give me 1 second to show you that.
We have about 5 minutes.
Okay, and that becomes a place for the rock wool. So I'm going to drop the rock wool into a cup of water right now and just let that soak for a few minutes while I'm talking. And now I'm going to take this cup. The plants need nutrients. So like I said, we have these little beads that will absorb, and it's going to be hard for me to show you in my hand, but I think you can see how tiny they are. And I'm just going to put those into the cup. The different colors represent the phosphorus, the potassium, and the nitrogen. So we talk to the kids about the nutrients that the plant needs to grow. And then I have a big jug of nutrient solution that I've mixed up 1 teaspoon to a gallon of water. So it goes a long ways. And I'm going to fill this almost to the top. Let me get that out of the way so I don't spill it. So you can see I've got it almost up to the top. And now I'm going to take my rock wool. And one thing I'll remind you of, watch the beads as we go through this. They are going to start absorbing water, okay? And I'm going to take the rock wool and I'm going to insert it, and I didn't wring it out at all. I'm just going to insert it into the little hole in the center of the cup. And I'm going to put it right on the container. So now it looks like this. To finish this up with the students, I'm going to take the dowel and I'm going to put it into one of the holes that I poked in. And what I found with the kids and what I'm finding right here is sometimes I don't make the holes big enough. So I just take a pencil and poke it in so that I can get that dowel in there. Okay. On the other side, I'm going to poke that hole so it's a little larger as well. And I'm going to put the straw in there. Maybe. Sorry, guys. Okay. There we go. So now it looks like this, okay? And then to finish this off, I have a couple peas that we sent home with the kids in a little envelope. And I'm going to set them right on top of the rock wool and just kind of press that down. So now it looks like this, okay? So we've got the nutrient, we've got space for the plant to grow. And it needs a little bit of aeration. So that's why we have the straw here. And we told the kids, don't breathe in when you're blowing air in there, you know, blow out, take your mouth away and do it again. So we had them blow into this about 3 times and just get some bubbles going. So they repeat that. And then they went and put this container in the light, so on a windowsill or something, and they were able to watch the peas hopefully grow. I will say, because the kids were working at home, you know, we couldn't see what they were doing all the time, so we're not 100% sure if they were aerating on a regular basis. We weren't entirely sure that they were keeping the level of the water up to the rock wool, so we didn't have total success with this, but this whole process was so fun and so engaging for our students that, you know, when it didn't work out right, we started looking at what are some of the problems, you know, what are some things that we could do that might make this work the next time. So some of the things we came up with were possibly soaking the seeds for a couple of days before we put together the hydroponics. We also thought maybe we should do a viability test on the seeds just to see, you know, are they at that point where they can germinate? And the other interesting thing that I found out in reading one article is that rock wool has kind of a higher pH than what most plants grow with. And so this article was talking about lowering the pH of the rock wool before using it to grow plants. So we came up with 3 possible problems, and that gives us opportunities to experiment and to look at, you know, what can we do differently to make this work, you know, a little bit better next time. So I'm going to stop with this portion of the presentation, and Kate is going to take over with some hydroponic hacks. And these are things that we have kind of looked at to make sure that the kids are able to try some things at home and hopefully have some success with
Do you want to show that one because it shows the beads?
Yeah, Kate just handed me this one. This one I started right at the end of the week last week, and you can see how large these beads are. And we kept reminding the kids, you know, this is the nitrogen, the phosphorus, the potassium. It represents those nutrients that the plants need in order to grow. I did soak these peas a little bit. They haven't germinated yet, but they are starting to, I can see little slits in the seed coat. So hopefully very soon we'll have some peas growing there. And Kate, are you ready to take it away?
Sure.
All right.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kate Porterfield, and I'm a volunteer with Wildcat Blooms Garden. And I'm going to show you two things that we've been doing with the students, two other ways that you can do hydroponics with them. One I've done with school kids for many years, and so I know it works really well, and it's super simple. Jamie, if you could put in the document, I have a data sheet document for this experiment. So it has a section where the students can describe what they're doing, describe the bulb they're going to use. They can draw pictures, they can write if they want to. But sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. In the winter, you can buy paper white or narcissus bulbs. And I don't have any, so I brought fake bulbs to show you. These are actually daffodils that I took out of my garden. But all you need is a jar and some gravel. Doesn't have to be pretty rock. I would rinse it first because it can be very dirty. And you just put gravel on the bottom of your jar, and then you put your bulbs on top, and they will grow. And the narcissus makes a beautiful paper flower that I love the smell of, but other people do not. So think of that if you're going to have all these in your classroom. If you're going to have like 40 bulbs growing in your classroom, you might not like that. So you have to decide if you like the smell. But you just put rocks in the bottom, you put your bulb in, you put water up to the bottom, give it some light, and it will grow. The roots grow first, and then the stalk, and then this white flower will grow. So I'm not sure if Jamie put the document in, but what we did with students this year is we had them do one control, which was like this, super simple. And then they were asked to change one aspect, the liquid, the solid, the container, the amount of light. And so they can compare the growth of both of those bulbs. So really basic, really simple. The document shows them how to keep track of the growth. It asks them questions ahead of time. So it really asks them to sort of do those pre-questions. What do you think is going to happen? Is it going to grow in tomato sauce or Sprite or whatever fluids they chose? And then there's a chart on there where they can document the growth. And I've had great success over the years. Kids have come up to me afterwards and been like, oh my God, a flower grew. It's very exciting, and it's almost fail-safe. It really can work really well. So that's one thing that we did, and it has the data sheet with it. The other thing I want to show you, sorry, got to set up, is a simple hack that you can do. I need those if you don't mind. So here's a tomato in water. So it's a jar, a piece of a pool noodle, which is one of these things, right? That costs like $1 or something. They come in two sizes, right? So I have the larger size, and then I have the smaller size. It depends on the jar that you're going to use. I put this in an old pickle jar, I think, and it just grew like crazy, right? We have also used 2-liter bottles. The opening is a little bigger, and so the larger pool noodle is helpful. One way that you can cut the pool noodle is that you can cut a section out, right? And then you take your sad tomato that's been out of water, and you put it inside. You put your wedge in the middle. Oops. Squeeze it together, and then this can squeeze into the top of the 2-liter bottle. And then you fill this with water, and the nutrients really help a lot. And it will grow just with water. This one really took off when we added nutrients. Now I think it's starting to turn green, and so I think I need to cover it because the sun is affecting it and it's getting algae in there. The other way you can do this is just with your pool noodle, just cutting it, and then again, you're just folding it in. So you take your roots, go underneath, right? And then you just fold the noodle in on itself, and that fits right in the top of the jar. It leaves you a little bit of space so that you can add water later. It's the same with the other way of doing it with the wedge. But it's, this has been just fun to watch grow, because it started sadder than this, and now it's become this really powerful tomato. So we're real happy with that. So those are simple things that if you don't have a kit, there's simple ways that you can grow in water and show kids how to grow in water in small space. I'm not sure what our time is, but I think now we just wanted to talk to you all, and I'll move over so Susan can come back on the screen. We just wanted to talk to you all about some resources that we've acquired over time. And I think Jamie will dump some of this in the chat. And then it might also be available. It might also be available on the Hoover and in the live binder. So there should be all kinds of places for you to get it. So the first one we want to talk about is Succeed. And I really like this because there's one part of their webpage, some of the stuff costs money, but this is a free part where it says Succeed in Language Arts, for example. And then it gives you ideas about what you can do with your students in language arts. And then there's also one that's social studies, math, health, art. So it's all tied to seeds and growing. And it just gives you ideas. So it's a one-page thing, document that just gives you these great ideas about growing. Do you want to talk videos?
Yeah, as far as videos go, a couple things that we've showed the students, and again, I think this will be in the chat here. We looked at Japanese carp and how in this city in Japan, where they have, ditches filled with water running all over the city and under the houses, they have carp that live in these ditches. And this is where they clean their food, their vegetables. It's really a fascinating video, and it really captures the kids' imagination and gets them thinking a little bit about, wow, how do they do this and how does this work? The other thing that we worked with the kids or showed the kids was growing spinach in an industrial hydroponic system. And this was really a cool video because they were talking about, how much food they could produce in a short amount of time as a hydroponic system. And the visuals for this video were cool. Amazing and very short, but very powerful for the students to see how hydroponic systems work on a bigger level than what we have, in an industrial or larger scale.
Can I say one thing with the Japanese videos? It was kind of cool because they shared, right, the villagers share the water. And so one of the women in one of the videos talked about how you have to have respect for your neighbors. You can't just throw anything into the water, right? Because the people downstream need to clean their vegetables. And then that water goes into a lake, which they use for drinking, and some of it goes to the agriculture. So there's this whole conversation about respecting the land and each other and working together, which is and working with the carp, which is super cool to me.
Mm-hmm. And then we've been working on our garden curriculum this year, including the hydroponic system. And we've found some really good resources from Fairbanks, Alaska, and Ag in the Classroom, Alaska. And so we would welcome you to take a look at those. Ag in the Classroom, they have different experiments that you can do. They have lots and lots of information to back up what they're saying. They have enrichment activities to go along with it. And so these are really amazing resources that you can use.
The Fairbanks one shows you how to do a hydroponic tower, which would be great for classrooms. And then also how to do soil growing in towers, which is kind of cool. We also put in here, and again, we can't see the chat right now, so yes. So we also put in here just a couple things, because when we're talking about water, right, we're thinking, how come hydroponics are better than the soil, and aren't we using more water? But indeed, we're conserving it. And so we have here New Mexico Drought Monitor, which is updated all the time. So that's kind of a cool tool to work with your kids. And then the water calculator, the students can go home and calculate how much water they're using, or your class can do it. And it's very simple. It just asks some basic questions, and then you get an idea of like how much water you are using and how much your family's using. It's, again, kind of a fun tool for students to use.
Okay, and then to kind of wrap it up.
Yeah, Jamie?
Oops, sorry.
No, you're good. You're right on time. I was just going to say.
Okay, thank you.
So we've been talking a lot to the students about different careers related to gardening, related to agriculture. And again, Ag in the Classroom is a wonderful resource for this. And so some of the things we've been talking to them about is chemistry, electric, water management, botany, farming itself, chefs, restaurant industry, and how they use agriculture and how it's all interrelated. So it's been truly a cool journey through the whole hydroponic system with, like I said, tons of resources out there to help you out.
There's also a lot of information about standards. So teachers are always concerned about, am I going to be able to fit this in with the standards that I need to do, the core curriculum ones, the STEM. Again, the Ag in the Classroom in Alaska and the Fairbanks one have standards listed. And then I personally, because we've been working on this curriculum, I think it's easy to meet the standards. It's not easy to teach. So don't get me wrong. It's easy to meet those standards using hydroponics because there's so much that you can be learning from the plants and from the water resources. I think that that shouldn't be a concern. And if anybody has questions, we're super happy to help people. And if you're looking for standards or anything like that, I'm happy to do some looking around for you. And I think that's our talk. And I think we have a couple minutes left. If anybody has any questions, we don't want to eat into Paul's time. So Jamie, I'm not sure how many minutes we have left.
We've got tons of time in Q&A. Before we get to actual questions, well, I guess this is a question, but with the resources that I put in the chat, the doc that you sent me, is it possible for me to change the share settings on and share that with folks in the chat because it's all compiled onto one doc, or did you want to create?
Yes, anything you want to do is
okay. I'm going to share the Google Doc that all of this was compiled into. So everything that I put in the chat is going to be under one location in this final link that I'm sending in the chat.
Sweet, that's great.
Cool. That is, I believe I have edit privileges on your doc there. So you've got plenty of time, 13, 14 minutes for Q&A. And Kat, if you're willing to mic up, your question was first, so take it away.
Sure. Yeah, I just had one small question. Lots of other little questions, but I was just wondering, with the tomato transplant in that jar, will you have to transplant that into the garden eventually, or does that will it actually bear fruit?
I don't know. Thank you for asking. We were talking about that recently. We're going to keep it in the jar and see what happens. So, drop your email in or tell Jamie what it is, and I'll send you a picture. But again, I think we need to do something about the algae that's growing to protect it. And hopefully it will bear fruit, but I just think it's maybe going to get too heavy for the jar and it'll tip over. But other systems like other hydroponic systems do grow tomatoes. So they can grow and bear fruit just in water.
Okay, great. Just one more question, since I'm here, is I'm just curious. I'll have to go back and see all the materials in the hydroponic system and everything. But I was just wondering how often it can be used. Seems like maybe you just received it, so I'm not sure how much you've had time to use it over and over again. But just curious how long those materials last.
Yeah. So that's a good question. We're still figuring that out. Like I said, we set it up in October. We have had to replace one of the bubblers in the tubs. It just kind of quit working. But I think all of the materials are fairly reasonably priced. And so far we're doing okay. We're going to knock on wood that it keeps running for quite a while. And like I said, it's not that expensive. And we're actually thinking of setting up another system because it is really fairly affordable. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
And we did go through one season so to speak, right? So Susan was able to harvest maybe 9 different times, and then we cleaned it out, and she just started the next sort of set. So we think that'll last for another couple of months. We had to refill the water every month or so, add some water to it every month or so, but you had to watch the pH and to add nutrients, but we did add water once or twice.
Yeah,
Can't
probably
remember.
about 3 times throughout the growing
Yeah.
season, I guess you would call it.
But that's really all you're doing. Super low maintenance. And Susan was able to leave it over Christmas break unattended because the light's on a timer and the water is not going anywhere. So it's great for holidays.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yes. Other questions?
Uh-oh. Anybody else?
I had one, but I lost it. So give me a minute, and
Okay.
and I'm gonna need a minute to get Paul's thing set up as well, so we can hang out.
Hey, Susan and Kate, this is Brittany. So my question, you guys are doing a great job and it was exciting to get to see you both. Whenever you do have the students back in class, are you going to have them do like the harvesting process of like cutting up the different herbs and lettuce and stuff that you're growing, or how are you guys doing that?
So the kids came back yesterday and we actually took them into the hydroponics room already. So they were able to see what's going on there and they were pretty fascinated by everything. And so now we've just planted some greens out in the garden. And one of the things we want to do is take greens from the hydroponics, greens from the garden into the cafeteria and do taste tests with the kids so they can compare, how do the hydroponics plants taste compared to the ones that are grown in the garden. The students will be doing some harvesting and we're looking at trying to find recipes where we can use some of the things that we are harvesting in different ways for the students to try them. We have access to a kitchen, which is absolutely wonderful. And so, yeah, we're looking at everything from them, looking at the nutrition of the plants, comparing garden to hydroponics and taste, and
How long it takes for them to grow.
Thank you.
We've planted this similar things in the garden already. So the lettuces and the greens, and definitely the lettuce and the green is tiny in the garden, and you saw the picture, they're about a foot tall in the hydroponics. So the students can see how the length of time it takes to grow different things in different medium. Sorry to interrupt.
Yep, that's fine.
Brittany, did that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was just excited to know that the students, with them coming back into the school, I wasn't sure of, all that good stuff of restrictions and keeping distance, but I'm excited to know that they're able to kind of get involved and get their hands working. So that's awesome. So we're just excited to see all your guys' growth and progress. So that's awesome.
It's been so fun for us. I think we've learned, along the way so much. So that's been really an awesome opportunity for us. And now we want to, get those kids in there and really working with it too.
I think also these kids who've been in Susan's garden elective classes, they've been growing all year. I'm a little startled the parents haven't had an uprising, because we've sent buckets home, we've sent little pots home, we've sent hydroponic stuff home, we've sent more seeds, we've asked them to do art with seeds, everything that we can think of, we deliver to their houses or send home with them, and we'll continue to do that. But yeah, they have been growing all year, so this will just add to that. Cool.
Okay, I guess I don't know if y'all are taking stacker monitoring, but I'll invite myself to ask my question, which is, can you talk a little bit more about, I don't know if you have it off the top of your head, in more detail about the water saving values of hydroponics, how that plays out, because I think that's such a big piece to talk about.
Yeah. So I'll try and take this. I don't know all of the details, but I know like in the Spinach video that we included in the resources, they talk about how that water is all recycled and used over and over again. And they have some incredible amount of water. I don't remember the exact number, but again, it's constantly reused. And so they aren't, taking more water out of the environment and adding it to the system. In our systems down there, like Kate said, in the hydroponics room, we add just a little bit of water to make up for the evaporation on, every 2 or 3 week basis. And so those have 12 gallons of water in them, and they don't do a bad job of just.
I mean, that's the survey that we can do with the students next year is how much are we watering outside and how much is in the hydroponics. I think the Spinach video, the guy does talk specifically about this because he wants to recycle the water. Other places at the end of a crop will throw away the water because the pH balance and the nutrients are so important. They'll throw out the water and start again every time. But he specifically, now I don't know how many chemicals that means he's using to get those balances, but he specifically has a system that reuses the water and keeps what they can, which is just super cool.
That's a great question. And yeah, we'll do a little more research into that because that is something we want to tackle with the kids next year. Thanks, Jamie.
I think it's such a relevant topic in
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for bringing that point into our attention. You've got about 5 more minutes for questions. If anybody has more questions, and Paul and I are getting ourselves set up for his presentation. So take it away. Yeah, go for it.
Okay, anybody else have questions for us?
We can also put our emails in the chat if anybody has questions that they come up with after. So when Paul is talking, we'll put our emails there, and please don't hesitate. And if anybody, can I invite them to come and look?
Sure.
If anybody wants to,
yeah.
If anybody wants to come and look at the system, then you're totally welcome. We'll organize something. Or if you want to come look at the garden.
Yeah, we'd love to have you come. We love having guests and visitors. I guess what I would say is I would recommend to anybody, even on a very simple basis like this one, give it a try. Let the kids try it. See what happens. And then, if it doesn't go right, start asking those questions. What happened? What can we change? How can we make it better? What are we going to do next time? It's such an amazing ongoing science experiment. It really never ends in terms of what you can do and what you can look at and investigate.
Right, just one thing I was thinking with the peas and how we now have experiments that we can do, right? It's a conversation with the kids that sometimes plants die, sometimes something we try to grow doesn't work, but it's not a failure. It's an opportunity to figure out, right? And so we're talking to the kids about trying, and that failure doesn't mean a bad thing, right? If it didn't work, it doesn't mean a bad thing. It means we get to learn something else, we get to do an experiment. Right, so that's a great lesson that we've talked to the kids about all year as we send all these things for them to grow home, and some things succeed and some things don't, or somebody's bucket runs away with somebody else.
So true. The garden was turned over to me from Mary Irwin. I'm sure a lot of you have met her or know her or heard of her. And she's just, she's my go-to person all of the time. And the one thing she told me, and I had to learn that kind of the hard way, she said the garden is always an experiment. It's an experiment in process.
Yeah.
Thank you, Susan and Kate, so much. What a great presentation. Let's all get you can mic up if you want. You can use the reaction button for applause and ta-das. That was really wonderful. And we do have time for 1 or 2 more questions. So I don't want to interrupt folks, but we have some enthusiasm about field trips to Wilson.
Yeah, anytime. Let us know. We're ready to have you come visit us. We'd love it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all for coming to the presentation. And I know Paul's going to do a great presentation, so I'm looking forward to listening to him.
Yes, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Okay.
I have a quick question. If there's one more just about the bulbs. Did you say you just put the rocks, that gravel on the bottom, and then you put the bulb, and then you fill it with water? And does that grow, like, that's it? And
Yeah,
it grows
that's
into a
totally it.
flower?
That's why it's so cool. I would put a few more rocks in this,
Okay.
put the bulb just laying on it,
Mhm.
and then you just put water up to the bottom of the bulb. You don't
And
fill
just
the
keep
whole
refilling
thing.
it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
then put it in light. The first time the water can get a little dirty. Sometimes you have to get the skin off because it'll flake off into the water. You know, it depends on how pretty you want it to be or how clear. Sometimes it can get smelly if the outside skin stays on,
Mhm.
but they don't have to be naked either.
Okay.
But yes, I asked a horticulturist, I asked my sister-in-law, who's a nursery woman, and if there were other bulbs that we could use, but she said, no, it's really the paper whites or the narcissus that can be forced. The other thing is that they can be expensive if you're trying to get them just a couple from the nursery. So it might be worth like getting together and buying a bulk from a company that mails it to you. Then you're at the whim of when it arrives, but they are a lot cheaper.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna ask that.
And the coolest
How to
part
get
is when the kids were putting their bulbs up to the camera to show us that they were in bloom. It was so awesome.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So you call them paperweights?
No,
Right.
paper white,
Paper white.
because they're a small, thin paper white flower.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it's all, Susan doesn't like the smell and I love it. Narcissus. And so they're from the daffodil family. And actually there's great information about the narcissus, and they found some enzyme that they might be able to use in cancer treatment. So there's also some backstory. So again, I'll put my email in. I have a info sheet.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
I have a question. Oh, sorry. How long does it take the bulbs to flower? What time frame of working?
About 6 weeks. And so usually you start them, that's a great question, thank you. The roots grow first, then the stalk, and then the flower. And they take about 6 weeks. And usually we start them in like November, and then they're blooming by Christmas. If you can get them, you can start them earlier, and then, because that's good and bad. I mean, the students can take them home and give them to their family, and they're blooming right about Christmas time. If you're doing experiments with them and they're in the classroom and you're not there, and you don't like the smell, that could be bad.
And if we're forcing them, we could start them now. Is that correct?
If you can find them.
We can find them. Okay.
They're really, that's why I asked my sister-in-law if there were other bulbs that we could find nowadays, like this time of year. But these are really, it's a fall winter experiment. Thank you for that question. That was great.
Okay, Paul, your turn. You're on. Thank you, everybody.
Oh, so let me see if I can share my screen here.
Okay, I'm going to write a couple things. Can I sit at the other desk? Yep.
I'm clicking on my entire screen, and share, cancel. Let's see.
Yeah, Paul, I was having trouble accessing my CNM account, and the thing that you kept sending me was a link rather than the actual attachment.
Okay, Jamie, you were saying send it on my desktop. That's what I've been doing.
Okay, yeah, you might.
And it's been turning out you claim on OneDrive.
Yeah, well, if you're able to share your screen, I'll let you just take it, and you got it. But yeah, you might have to change your permission settings on that document within the document itself, so that anybody can view it, so that I don't have to have CNM credentials if you're having trouble with my CNM. So we appreciate your all's patience. We'll get it going here in just a sec. Hey, there you go, Paul. You're good. You don't need me. Let me know if you need anything, but it looks like you're in the right place. So go ahead and, well, you were sharing your screen. So if you have the PowerPoint open or can open it for yourself from there.
Can you see it now?
No, you were presenting and then I think you stopped. And we are doing plenty good on appreciate, patience with our momentary technical tips. All right, we see your screen is sharing. So if you want
Can you see it now?
We see Google. And so if you can go from there on that browser, just the window you've got open right now, if you can pull up your PowerPoint from there, that would be fantastic. Can you open it within that very window?
Oh, okay. Now can you see it?
Paul, it looks like you're sharing your blank google.com website page. So if that's a Chrome or a Firefox page, whatever that may be, just the one that says Google, just go from there, open it from there, because it looks like it's a file that can be viewable on a browser rather than just the doc itself. You might need to select specifically what you want to share when you press share screen, because what I see is Google, yeah, and I see the key as in you're logged in, but that's what I see. I don't see. Paul, if you want to, you can also, if you're here, I'll send you a message in the chat privately. All right. Yeah, you know what? If you want to just go from there, because we have your email page open up, if you just want to go in and look at the thing that you open up one of your emails that has the attachment in the bottom there, just go ahead and open it from there and that should work. So any of those towards the bottom that have your name on it on the right, you've got the right thing shared. You just need to open that and then click the attachment within that email. Oh, did you stop sharing? Nope, you were sharing the right page before. Now you're back to the blank Google page. So if you go back to your email, the next step within, after you shared the page with your email, so go back to sharing the page with your email, like you just had before the Google one. Do you want to just talk through it and I can try and figure out, it'll take me a few minutes to get troubleshooting on my CNM access, but if you want to just start by talking through it, I can.
Yeah, so that's what I'll do. Thanks, Jamie. So the critical question then becomes, what does gardener do when there's limited growing space? And so in my case, I'm discussing the limited amount of soil, whereas Susan and Kate were going with the premise that no soil was available. So got this idea when the pandemic started in 2020. Of course, people have been growing in containers for quite some time. No novelty there, but so back in World War One, why the emphasis, because of the worldwide pandemic at the time in 2018 or 1918, was we want to grow more vegetables. So this kind of theme came back last year in 2020, but not a lot of people had huge backyards, or so they began growing more often in containers. And so the basic premise then behind container garden is first you got to select your container. Then you select your soil. The best soil is a combination of all three particles sizes: the sand particle, the clay particle, and the medium-sized silt particle. And you complement it with compost. Then you select the plant species. We'll get into that a little bit more detail. During these times of questionable food availability, and then edible vegetable and fruit varieties are the best. Then you go ahead and fill and plant, and the size of the container dictates to a certain extent what vegetable species and crop species and varieties you use. Then set up a watering system or a drip irrigation system, either one, to go along with your container garden, or check daily the leaves to see if they're wilting. If they're wilting and the soil is dry, then water more. If the wilting has a black tip to the leaf, then and the soil is moist, then you've watered too much. Cut back on your watering at that point. Well, you can go with a particular garden theme. That garden theme can be a color kind of theme, with the color being either the color of the leaves. Of course, that doesn't change much, green to grayish in some leaves. Some have vivid leaf colors, like the genus Coleus. But if you choose a color theme based on the petal color, then you've got a lot more colors in your palette. Blues and reds are common, reddish based and oranges. You can go with a theme of season too. Various crop species tend to do better at the different seasons. We're coming from the season that growing leafy vegetables like kale, like lettuce, and salad type vegetables like radishes are great to grow, and also getting into the season where coriander, also known as the herb that's used in salsa, cilantro, good time for that as well. Getting into May, when planting tomatoes and chilies, the hotter weather crop species are good. Then the fall is yet another time
Oh,
for
I just want to
planting.
interrupt you to let you know I've got it up here. I apologize for the delay. And I'm just going to speed through the slides that you've already gone through. So if you want to look, I've got it live in the Zoom.
Here we go. So thank you, Jamie.
Just tell me when to stop. I'm going to speed through these slides to get caught up to you.
Next next slide, please.
It's just taking a second.
Or am I thanks. So on the seasonal theme, why if you want to grow chilies for ornament or chilies as a spice, either way, there are a number of New Mexico State University chilies that have a theme of a particular celebration, celebration. For example, like there's a chili that tends to bloom and mature into a pod on St. Patrick's Day. There's one later that does well on May Day. There's one that does well on Cinco de Mayo. There's one that comes into season then later on in the year, like July 4th and on to Veterans Day. So New Mexico State University has these series of cultivars that are based on the time of the season. You can also choose a culinary use type of theme. For example, this time of the year is great for a salad theme. Later on in the heart of the summer, growing chilies and then onions, like green onions. Follow that up with coriander and tomatoes. Then you've got a nice ingredient for salads. Another theme for a one pot kind of container garden would be a herb garden, such as sage, and also a good one is basil, rosemary. The perennial herbs like rosemary tend to require less water than one like basil. Then you can go the the veggie culinary use themes. And if you want to get into using plant cuttings or kitchen scraps, Jag Singh rather, from Daisy Creek Farms has this video out on 14 kitchen scrap type of garden where ginger, green onion, garlic, potato, carrot, lettuce, leeks, celery, basil, mint, rosemary, oregano, sage, and thyme can be different parts of them that you've salvaged after using the portion for your culinary arts in your kitchen, while the remainder you can use to propagate a whole new plant. For example, in the case of onion, you cut off the, usually when you prepare an onion for frying in, enjoying the flavor of the onion in your dish that you're making, you can salvage the bottom part where there's just remnants of fibrous roots, put that in water, and then when the water imbibes the meristematic tissue at the very base of the root in the leaves that are all wrapped around and translucent, why that will grow a new top after it grows the roots. So once it grows the roots, then you put it into soil and it'll grow the top. So this Jag Singh then has ways that you can take kitchen scraps and propagate them into full plants. Then there's another video that's available, Kevin Esperutu of Epic Gardens. He has top 9 herbs, top 9 crop species rather that are good during times of survival. This being a pandemic, for some people, it's survival time. So beans, corn, squash, cabbage, potatoes, kale, sweet potatoes, lentils, and herbs then are all good crop species to grow in during these times when, if you're subsisting solely on your garden, because they have all the nutrition, the macronutrients, and the micronutrients that you need. Well, perhaps if you're not on a very tight budget and you want to more have ornamentals, then you can choose plants with similar ecological requirements, like tropical ones that you might find in a jungle kind of habitat, either neotropical or old world. You could use an aquatic theme like cattails and horsetails, or you could go with a desert theme with cacti and succulents. Next slide, please, Jamie. So here's one garden that I helped Delaney and Susan Barrett with, and they live in Edgewood. And you can see in the foreground, a Rose of Sharon. To the right of the foreground, then marigold. Marigold is always a good species because of its allelopathic and insect warding properties. In the background, there's a palm. So they were took an indoor plant outdoors in the summer. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you, Jamie. Yeah, containers can vary in size. Technically, a raised bed, if it has a closed bottom, is a container. This particular raised bed at C&M, back when I first was teaching horticulture, 2016, did not have a bottom. And when we watered it, it would leak out holes in the side. It's good to have some sort of drainage. So it was a semi container. One disadvantage of using these concrete kind of raised beds is that they retain the heat so much that you have to water not once but twice a day in the heat of the summer. So next slide. Now I'll go with the traditional containers, thinking on the containers, and another container theme. Instead of having your containers on your patio or surface where you're growing that receives light and spreading it out horizontally all over the surface of your patio, you could go vertical like this example, and specialized pot with the openings of the soil so that you can put individual plants along the side. Great technique for vining plants. Next slide, please, Jamie. Thank you. Yes, Jamie's chatting strawberries. I'll get to that in a second. Good comment. So herb containers are always great. Here I've salvaged a few miscellaneous containers, and I always like the habit of putting in a wooden stick and then labeling what species it is on one side. On the reverse side, then putting the date where you planted the seed. So I'm getting some growth early on. Some of the herb species that you might want to go with would be like marjoram and basil and dill. Whatever your favorite herbs are, having them handy near the back porch on a veranda or in a windowsill is nice, because then you have a kitchen herb garden. Next slide. Or you could go creative with containers and what they look like. On the left, you see an old iron bathtub with a drain in the very bottom. And growing in the soil just put in the bathtub, you have two cabbages that are rather ornamental. Another idea on the bathtub kind of scenario is put a container within the bathtub, within the container, and then you can change out the containers and change out the species as you see fit. So if the bathtub was in a real prominent place, why you could create some interest there by changing that out. On the right, you see this seashell of a gastropod, a snail. So that's another way in which you can use a creative container. In this case, filled with a plant in the sunflower, in the not sunflower, but the pineapple family, bromeliad family. Next slide. Next, we have some small containers. If you have a paper container like an old coffee cup and you wash it out with soap and water, another good cleaning agent is 10% bleach solution. With bleach solution, why it kills viruses, any plant viruses, any other kind of viruses, bacteria, fungi. So it's good to sterilize the container first. That is, if you're germinating a seed. So if you're going with a paper container, then punch holes in the bottom just with a fork. If you're going with a plastic container like yogurt or small container of, say, sour cream or something like that, then take a pocket knife and cut a hole in it. For students, young students, unsupervised, poking it with a fork is better. Of course, anytime you have a sharp object, you should work with and trust your students before you give them sharp objects. Or you can pre-do it yourself as an instructor or teacher prior to it, so it's all set to go. So if you have some seeds, then have that ready with filling the containers up. Thanks for changing the slide. If you're going with a larger container, like this nursery pot, 5-gallon container, then with the nice large holes in it, cover it with newspaper, so that way the soil won't slip out. Wet the newspaper and it'll cling to the sides very well, so you can add the soil easily. Next slide. So then it's a matter of filling it with the soil. What you want to do if you're recycling the old soil or you're starting a compost pile, if you can attain a temperature by covering it, the top of the soil or the top of the mulch for compost, if you can reach 130 degrees measured with a thermometer that you would use on a turkey in an oven, if you can measure that temperature to kill the viruses and the bacteria and the insect larvae and the insect eggs, if you reach 130 for 1 week, then you kill all pathogens in it. Take that soil and then place it, that recycled soil, and place it on a screen so you can get out the large particles and uncomposted particles, rocks, things like that. And you're left then in the bottom with the soil. So you ready your seedling in the upper right. You take your seedling and place it so that you have 2 fingers on both sides of the stem, and then you invert the pot, push the bottom of the pot with the holes of the pot. Why you can use that to your advantage by poking a stick through it until the whole root ball comes out of that plug. Sometimes in the nursery business, that's called a plug. But you want to tease the bottom roots because this is kind of root bound. The roots are competing with each other because they're circling around. So if you tease the bottom Or if you make grooves, then the roots tend to radiate out to all directions of the compass and make full use of the bigger pot they're in. Next slide, Jamie. The finished product then on the Big Jim chili would look like something like this. On a lettuce garden with Swiss chard and the kale might look something like that. And on the right-hand side, you might see your big boy tomato cultivar look like that. For tomatoes, of course, they're vining, so you want to add some kind of support structure. Your tomatoes being either determinate in height, where they only grow in a mature size to a height, particular height, and no higher, or if you use an indeterminate one, they continue to grow throughout the year. So hopefully then you'll wind up, if you water daily, with this next slide of cherry tomatoes. After they grow up, then go ahead with a strip of cotton cloth and tie them up and harvest them. This is a November shot of last year. You can get a nice full crop then if you daily tend your tomatoes. Next slide. So Jamie was mentioning, hey, on hanging baskets, go with the strawberries. So I just picked up recycled this hanging basket. It had Spanish moss in the bottom. Spanish moss is a bromeliad along with the pineapple family, as kind of a floor of the hanging basket. So I reinforced it with a little paper and then put soil in it, and the strawberry plant watered it well. Next slide. So you have all kinds of themes that you can use. You can fill your containers so they spill out, and you can add color so they give you a real thrill. The viewers a real thrill, but make sure you water them properly so the leaves don't wilt due to overwatering or underwatering. That's why you got your holes. And you can always then adjust later if you have problems, if you read the leaves. So don't kill those, and you're in good shape. For tips on gardening, why you can take my horticulture class in Central New Mexico. That is Biology 1996 and 1996, 96L, control number 93198. Catch the buzz. Next slide. Right now I'm working with the several outfits: Tree New Mexico, Rocky Mountain Youth Corps, First Choice Community Health, and UNM. We're planting 2.6 acres of trees and shrubs. And in June, we'll have Dr. Olivia Carroll come out and take us on a bee walk. 1,000 different species of bees in the state of New Mexico. And we're planting native New Mexico plants to bring those bees back. Next slide. Just wanted to give a brief shout out, since we all started on our whole garden conference on Cesar Chavez's birthday. Thought it'd be a good idea to mention his contribution in a more formal way. Born in Yuma, Arizona, spent so much time in California, organized migrant farm workers to boycott companies that were violating the rights of migrant farm workers. He worked with John F. Kennedy's brother, R.F. Kennedy, who lent support in congressional hearings to him. He developed this non-violent tactics like Mahatma Gandhi out of India did to gain support. He even fasted against pesticide use. He was a major, not only labor leader, but a civil rights leader, and won the presidential U.S. Medal of Freedom. in 1993. We have a state street in Albuquerque named after him. If you continue on in that street, why, there's another street that's named after his colleague. Next slide. That is Dolores Huerta, and she's still living. She worked with Cesar Chavez. So this is a sculpture at Dolores Huerta's park at the corner of Cesar Chavez and Isleta Road. So it's like this is us. So thank you. Sorry for my technical difficulties. Thanks for bearing with me, and appreciate special thanks to Jamie. So
Have 10 minutes or so
Thank you.
for questions. So thank you so much, Paul. That was really great. Love that closing there.
Sorry.
What questions do you all have for Paul? Kat
Thank
had a
you.
question earlier asking, can you sterilize with soap and water, or should you use another method? I'm not sure what.
I think I'll go with chat because my speaker is not good at all.
Cool.
Yes. Sterilize with either 10% bleach or soap and water and rinse. It's more critical if you're in a kind of greenhouse environment and controlled environment agriculture, but not as critical if you're out of doors. If the container that you're using happened to have a plant in it that died due to some sort of virus, then most certainly do the 10% bleach solution to kill that virus. And I just wanted to give a shout out to all those that were involved previously, especially Travis McKenzie, and that went with big, huge containers. I think they had 100 containers that they passed out to the general public and students. I'm sorry I was not able to participate in that, but I thought I should mention it, their contribution to container gardening in our area. One question is, would it be better to put containers in a raised cement bed? I would not recommend the raised concrete bed unless your physical plant dictated to you that that's the only thing you could do. If you wanted to go with a combination of the concrete raised bed and the plastic containers, then I would use some kind of insulator in between them, perhaps like peanuts, those packing peanuts, perhaps like peanut shells, real peanut shells, out on the outside of the container. Don't put any foam peanuts in your plant growing container, but that might insulate it somewhat. But like I said, I don't like the concrete because it holds the heat too long. Yes, someone, Jamie said organic all the way. Totally agree with that. Oh, and Michelle said that she too is from Yuma, Arizona, right on the Colorado River. That's really good. I've only visited that area. Don't you, Michelle, do you get any of the landrace varieties of from the Yaqui Native American people? Michelle, do you get any Yaqui Indian kind of cultivars?
You know, growing up there, my grandmother did, but
Cool.
I've been here a while, but it was absolutely, we are masters, right, of irrigation and just how green and beautiful it can be with 2¼ inches of rain a year. It's really
2¼
that was the, that's about what we get a year. So irrigation, that's why I'm always so interested in container gardening and really making water efficient. But yes, she had this amazing garden in Yuma growing up.
I see. Michelle, in a case like that where water would be super important, why then on your container on the top of the soil, then put mulch on top of it as well. And with a backyard kind of concrete patio, you could insulate the bottom of the container. If you had to set it on top of the concrete, then insulate the bottom with cardboard, multiple layers of cardboard, things like that. That would cut down on the amount of heat that going to the soil and the amount of evaporation. So another good idea. Jamie, thanks for keeping me on time, advancing the slide. You got us within time limit too. You did an amazing job. I did not give an easy job to Jamie. I had a hard time uploading my presentation properly. It was my fault though. It wasn't Jamie's fault. Totally mine.
Worries. Hey, I wanted to just make one quick note. This room will automatically put people back in at 5:10 to the closing out room. So stay put and please, we do still have 5 minutes for questions, but at 5:10 it will automatically put people in that room. So if you're in the middle of an answer or a question, but we can totally use now 4 minutes remaining we have. So keep it coming. Paul, you're rocking it. Thanks so much. And everyone for following along and asking great questions. I have a question for you, Paul. What are your favorite biodegradable containers? And can you recommend any that are affordable? I have poked little holes at the bottom of some of my cardboardish egg cartons, but that doesn't seem to be the best because it's a fairly shallow space for soil. And those peat moss ones aren't exactly cheap. So I was wondering if you had any recommendations on biodegradable, pots you can just put right in the soil that will disintegrate and let the roots grow through. Mary Irwin just suggested eggshells. I love that idea. I've not done that, but I will definitely try that. So as we automatically here in just over a minute go back into the main room, can we give our presenters, all of them, Susan, Kate, and Paul, big rounds of applause, hearts, applause, laughter, smiles. Well, I learned a whole ton. I really, I learned a whole ton. And there's always more neat stuff out there, and working with small spaces indoors. students or families' homes, you know, in a variety of things. This is so cool. I'm so glad that I had the honor of, as best I could, being tech support for this session. And I'm super looking forward to our closeout and share out at the main room here in just a minute. Thank you, the three of you and everybody for being here. We'll see you in the main room in just a minute. Just hang tight and stay tuned. And it should, let's see, should automatically put us back in there. So, thanks again.
Thank all of you. This has been a wonderful opportunity for me to learn a lot of different aspects of school gardening. So thank you.
Yeah, definitely get a hold of us if you have any questions.